Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Staffing reductions, center closings, and database access issues at the Social Security Administration have been in the headlines lately. But my next guest argues that while all of these may save some money around the edges, they won't fundamentally address the serious funding challenges facing the Social Security program. Program Integrity Fellow at Arnold Ventures, Doug Criscatello, joins me now. The Social Security Administration, Doug, has been one of the principal targets of DOGE really since the beginning of the Trump administration. And they have asserted massive fraud and inaccurate data and overpayments and say they're really saving money. Are they?
Well, not surprisingly, like other agencies across the government, the Social Security Administration is being scrutinized by the new administration and its DOGE service. And that scrutiny has led to operational changes like full overpayment clawbacks, staffing reductions, and database access and accuracy concerns. And allegations of rampant fraud at Social Security are being voiced, driven by concerns over Social Security number usage and database upkeep practices involving death records. We've all heard the various stories about, records being in the database of people that have been gone for many, many years. But instances of fraud and improper payments at the Social Security Administration, particularly in the old age and survivors insurance program, are actually quite modest compared with other federal agencies. So while prudent fraud investigation makes sense, it shouldn't fuel the false notion that fraud is the real problem at SSA and that operational improvements can fix Social Security's financial problems. DOGE has yet to uncover program abuses and operational practice problems that amount to anything close to the biggest fraud in history, as we've heard from some. So while DOGE actions are hitting the headlines and may ultimately affect customer service and program integrity down the road, none address the serious fiscal challenges facing Social Security. The fact of the matter, the headline should always be on this topic, that the long forecasted wave of baby boomer retirements has now begun to crash down on the system. So the greatest threat facing Social Security is the solvency of the trust funds that are used to pay beneficiaries.
And there's a lot of misunderstanding about that solvency. I mean, people think that they paid into Social Security all their life, and so the money should be there when they get back or when they are ready to retire. So what do you mean when you say solvency?
Well, the trust funds that are used to pay retirement and disability benefits. And it's accurate to think of these trust funds as accounting constructs. They're not trust funds in the traditional sense. They're not pots of gold waiting for folks to tap into them. Those trust funds will deplete their reserves within the next decade. Now, that doesn't mean they're broke or bankrupt. It just means that Social Security will be forced to rely entirely on newly collected payroll taxes, which are only expected to be sufficient to cover about 80% of scheduled benefits, unless the Congress and the President reform Social Security. Now, the reason that we have these reserves is because more money has been paid into Social Security each year than has been needed to pay beneficiaries. So they've built up a reserve, a surplus, and that surplus is going away. For the main retirement trust fund, that's happening fairly soon in 2033. So benefits will have to be cut at that point. And it's really important to emphasize here that predicting this depletion and the need to reduce benefits, it might be the longest running and most accurately forecasted event ever. We've known about it for decades. This is no surprise. People are living longer, birth rates are lower, so there's fewer people working to support retirees. And as I said, the baby boomers are now retiring in droves. So we've seen this coming for a long time, and it's basically here.
The most predicted fiscal crisis in history, I think, is a phrase that often gets
Yeah,
used about this, right?
that's correct. Yes.
So, just to kind of go back to that issue, it's not a trust fund, it's a pay as you go system, and more people are extracting payments than are making payments because more of us are getting older and fewer of us are in the salary earning generation
Yep.
that's paying in, right?
That's exactly it.
Okay, so that's easy to say. And Doug Criscatello, who is a program integrity fellow with Arnold Ventures, just said it. What do we do about this problem then?
Well, importantly, we need to act quickly. The longer that we delay reform, the more severe the measures will need to be to gain solvency. So, unfortunately, elected officials seem content to kick the can down the road. And it's a dead end road at that, right? They can't continue to do this forever. And the reason that reform has been delayed, because there's some political pain associated with reforming the program. So you either reduce benefits and or increase payroll taxes to move to solvency. And, as we heard throughout the 2024 election cycle, candidates have become fond of saying they're not going to touch Social Security. But if they don't, that simply means that under current law, benefits will be reduced substantially. Or if they don't want to reform Social Security, they could pass a law to keep Social Security as it is now and just take any funds from the general fund of the Treasury to make full payments. And that is the most fiscally irresponsible approach that could be imagined. We would start to add substantially to our already enormous national debt. And it would dramatically alter the system's pay as you go model that's been in place since its inception. And this date is just around the corner. For decades we've been pointing to this as I've indicated, and here we are. We're looking at 2033. Benefits will be reduced if the Congress and the president don't act to avert that insolvency.
I was just looking at some numbers before we got on the phone here, and it said that between Social Security and Medicare, their shortfall this year was going to be $728 billion, and that within a decade, it would be $2 trillion. That's so many zeros, it's not even imaginable. And yet, as you're talking about taking money from the general fund, that means we borrow more. That means we have to pay more interest. And the current disruption in the bond market might be having an impact on how people are thinking about the cost of that borrowing. Is it prompting like a revisit of this problem?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. I know these numbers are astronomical. Yeah, I like to remark that it's unfortunate that million, billion, and trillion are phonetically similar because they are fundamentally different concepts. $1 million coins is about a mile. A billion would, just setting them up side by side would stretch about 1,000 miles. A trillion would wrap around the globe 50 times.
Wow.
So anything that starts with a T is big here. And interest on the national debt now is $1 trillion a year. We need to be chipping away at that, not adding to it. And there are lots of solutions to this social security crisis. I'm not saying they're all easy to do politically because there is some pain. The fact of the matter, as I mentioned earlier, you're either going to reduce benefits in some way for some recipients or increase taxes. Or, likely the solution is really you do both. Adding to the national debt in the current context simply does not make sense. It's never made sense, and it particularly doesn't make sense right now.
Is it the easy button, though,
It could be.
in the short run?
Boy, it would just be such a terrible precedent. It's hard to imagine it happening, but, I guess stranger things have occurred. So yeah, I don't have a crystal ball to figure out how this is going to play out, but a number of groups have offered up what seem to me to be sane proposals